everyone. This is update for September 6, 2023, day 562 of the war, and of the date update. Also catch up for September 5. So first of all, I'm gonna discuss a little bit general developments. It's gonna be short, and then I'm gonna switch to the situation on the battleground in Ukraine. First, let's start with the situation in Ukraine. Sorry, not in Ukraine, in Russia. Economically, things are definitely getting worse and sort of out of control. The Russian ruble continuing its decline relative to US dollar. What that really means also that Russian government borrowing is increasing in cost, so the interest rates are going up as well, which makes the borrowing, and as we all know, Russia has a huge state budget deficit due to the military expenses. So then another part of all of this equation is the price for gasoline and diesel fuel also going up very quickly. And as I said, there are minor shortages in sort of in regional markets, but obviously, Russian capital is fine. Then also export of Russian crude oil hit, I think, like 11 months low in August, which is obviously one of the contributing factor to decline in Russian currency, and then also problems with state budget and so on. So the situation in Russia is clearly, far from perfect and developing in a negative direction. However, it doesn't mean there is sort of, the war machine stops tomorrow or in a month or in a two. It just, slow moving disaster that may take another year or two if things continue the way they are. So it doesn't mean that Russian economy is going to fall apart tomorrow or any in the near future, which also means strategically that for Ukraine there is not much help from that. Let's put this way. Also, situation economically in China is obviously pretty bad. But what Chinese government is doing is basically devaluing Chinese currency, yuan, which largely is going to be solving Chinese economic problems, because what it does, it completely destroys this consumption bubble that was created in China over past, let's say, 15 years, since 2008, let's put this way. So that's going to get destroyed as the yuan is getting devalued, and resources will be refocused on manufacturing and export-oriented sector, which is where the wealth is generated in China. So basically, it goes back to sort of old ways how China generated wealth. So from that perspective, it will be net positive for China over a long-term period, medium-term period, as unproductive investment will be destroyed and capital will be channeled in more productive areas of sectors of Chinese economy. Now I'm going to switch to the situation in Ukraine, but more sort of, not totally economically, but economically related, and it's more about agriculture. So Russia continues attacking Ukrainian port infrastructure relentlessly. The damage is growing by day, and so therefore ability to export Ukrainian grains through the ports, which is the most efficient and really only viable, profitable way to export Ukrainian grain, is gonna be shut off soon. Don't have reports from Ukrainian government on the damage, but it's growing by day, and so this is basically killing ability of Ukrainian economy to export grain. So as I said before. This is a deliberate strategy by Russia, where they're not attacking ships because that can create a lot of political problems for Russia and negative sort of reaction from various countries whose ships are going to get destroyed. So they decided to destroy port infrastructure because this is just Ukraine, so nobody's going to be sort of complaining besides Ukraine, but the war is going on, so it's happening, so sort of it's kind of like no big deal. And the other long-term goal of this strategy is basically make support of Ukraine as expensive as possible, or the increase the financial cost to the West of supporting Ukraine and making it as high as possible. So just that's one, and then there's just very sort of straightforward profit motive there, because Russia is effectively knocking out large competitive supplier of grain from the world market, and so therefore the prices will remain firmer than otherwise they would be, and that will help Russian export of grain. It's I'd say less competitive, so they really need higher prices because, as everybody knows, they cannot use SWIFT, so it's some kind of like workaround transactions that I almost want to say there is probably like exchanges of huge bags of cash and so on, and so so that really means that it's inefficient, and that's why Russia is so adamant that they want to be reconnected to SWIFT, because the way the trade is done, it has huge overhead, which significantly reduces profits. But it doesn't look like basically Russian grain export will be done through SWIFT. So it looks like things will remain the way they are. Now let's switch to the situation on the battleground in Ukraine, and I'm gonna do walkthrough front line in a clockwise fashion. So starting from north, so the situation along the state border remains the same. No essential differences, no essential potential developments there. Let's put it this way. The situation along on the North Lugansk front line is remaining the same. This sort of now, I would say, typical Russian attacks in this area in the middle of the front line, but it's all tactical. Otherwise, it's fairly quiet. Just as I said, skirmishes and tactical attacks. Now let's move to the North Donbass front line. Things here in similar way as up north. So the situation here, especially in the northern sector, is fairly quiet, just skirmishes. And then in the southern, it's there were some Ukrainian attempts at attacking Lyshivka, but so far they fizzled out. And then there is a Russian counterattack to apparently improve positions, maybe recapture lost ground and so on. But they're all tactical. There is nothing of strategic importance that's happening here. Now let's move to the central Donbass front line, and things here as they usually are. So attacks, tactical attacks in Marinka, tactical attacks around Avdiivka. With no result for the Russian side. Now let's move to the Zaporizhya front line. Things here are sort of more or less in general strategically the same. Ukrainian forces, so let's just actually start with the more eastern side. So this, call it now Staromlinivka area. Basically, Ukrainian command decided to sort of shift the axis of attack, so they moved a little bit, as you can see, towards east. There is Um, there is some progress for Ukrainian forces. It's fairly, it's minimal. I don't know, maybe like 500 meters or something like that. So it's not like any like a decisive breach of the defensive positions and so on. This is just as it is typically just painful squeeze, expensive squeeze that, in my opinion, Ukraine cannot pay that price. But it is that's how it's done. The only significant difference, and I mentioned it before, and significant improvement from Ukrainian side is that finally there is a strong artillery support that really helps for the troops on the ground, to the point that even, for example, this cluster munitions are used to basically demine the battlefield to extent possible. And it's not obviously it's not perfect, doesn't demine, but at least there is some attempt, and there is finally some kind of like concentrated fire. There is there is logic behind this artillery support, and it's actually meaningful for their attacking troops. And that's probably what explains this very marginal success, is that troops are really finally feeling that artillery works in unison, and basically it's as one. So otherwise, the area actually around Staromlinivka directly is so far quiet. Now let's move to this Robotyne area. So Ukrainian troops continuing their attacks. They continue attacks towards Verbove without so far much advances. Where there is advance is actually between Novoprokopivka and Verbove. Basically, Ukrainian forces kind of created like very narrow corridor. So in the way it is right now is sort of unexploitable, because it needs to be extended in both sides. But it's just because it's very susceptible to the flanking counterattacks, and essentially you can get cut off. But there is some advance here. It's sort of like, almost think about this just like this arrow that's very narrow and fairly long in tooth. Now let's switch to the situation along the Dnipro River. Things here remain the same, status quo. No attempts to exploit bridgeheads by Ukrainian command at this point, and the Russian command is simply, so far, looks like does not have enough resources to basically destroy those bridgeheads. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and till next time.